Daniel Rahman woke before sunrise, the way he always did when something felt wrong, though he could not yet explain why. The apartment was quiet, filled only with the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of early buses rolling through the city. He reached for his phone on the bedside table, expecting routine emails and overnight updates from clients in different time zones. Instead, a single message sat at the top of his inbox, marked urgent. The sender's name made him pause. Victor. Cole, his business partner, rarely used email for serious matters. They spoke daily, sometimes hourly. Daniel opened the message, still half asleep, and read the first line. By the second sentence, the sleep vanished completely. His position had been terminated. Effective immediately. Access revoked. Company property to be returned within 48 hours. The message was formal, cold, and written as if sent to a stranger. Daniel read it again, searching for a mistake, a joke, or an explanation hidden somewhere between the lines. There was none. He sat upright, heart beating faster, confusion spreading through him like cold water. For 20 years, Rahman and Cole Consulting had been his life. He had helped build it from a small rented office with broken chairs and unpaid bills into one of the city's most respected advisory firms. Every client relationship, every long night preparing presentations, every risk taken during uncertain years carried his fingerprints. And yet, according to the message, he no longer belonged there. Daniel called Victor immediately. The call rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. Short text followed. We need to talk. No reply came. Outside, sunlight slowly touched the buildings across the street, but the warmth never reached him. Something deeper than job loss settled in his chest. It felt personal. An hour later, Daniel drove to the company office, hoping the email was some legal misunderstanding. The parking lot looked normal, employees arriving with coffee cups, security greeting people at the entrance. But when Daniel approached the doors, his access card blinked red. The guard, someone Daniel had known for years, avoided eye contact and politely explained that management had issued new instructions. Daniel could not enter without authorization. The words sounded unreal. This building existed because of him. He remembered signing the lease, painting walls with employees during the early days, celebrating their first major contract with cheap pizza eaten on the floor. Now he stood outside like a visitor. He stepped back onto the sidewalk, trying to think clearly. Maybe Victor was dealing with a crisis, okay? Maybe lawyers were involved, okay? Maybe there was an explanation waiting. Daniel forced himself to stay calm, repeating that logic would solve this. His phone rang shortly afterward. Relief rushed through him when he saw the caller ID, not Victor, K, but Lena, a senior analyst who had worked closely with both partners for years. Her voice sounded nervous. Daniel, I don't know if I should call, but you deserve to know, she said quietly. Daniel felt tension rise. Know what? There was a long pause before she answered. The restructuring started. Weeks ago, Daniel frowned. What restructuring? She explained carefully, choosing her words as if afraid someone might overhear. New contracts had been introduced under the excuse of improving efficiency. Departments shifted. Ownership percentages adjusted through updated agreements. Most employees assumed Daniel approved everything. Victor had said the changes were mutual decisions. Daniel's mind raced backward through recent months, stacks of paperwork signed during busy periods. Documents presented quickly between meetings, Victor reassuring him that everything was routine. Daniel trusted him completely. He rarely read every detail. They had always operated on trust. Victor said you were stepping back, Lena added softly, that you wanted less responsibility. Daniel felt the ground shift beneath him. He had never said that, not once. After the call ended, Daniel sat inside his car, staring at the steering wheel. Pieces began connecting in ways he did not want. To accept the missed calls, the sudden paperwork, Victor handling more legal discussions alone. None of it had seemed suspicious then. It had felt efficient. A partner helping manage growth. Now it looked like preparation. Memories flooded. In the day he met Victor at a small business seminar 20 years earlier. Victor had been charismatic, confident, full of ambitious ideas, but lacking structure. Daniel, steady and analytical, balanced him perfectly. Together, they built something stronger than either could alone. They shared risks, victories, and failures. When Daniel's wife passed away years earlier, Victor stayed at the hospital through the night, promising they were family beyond business. That promise echoed painfully now. Daniel drove home slowly, trying to hold on to reason. Maybe Victor believed this was best for the company. Maybe investors pressured him. Maybe there was fear Daniel never noticed. The search for excuses felt automatic, as if protecting the friendship mattered more than protecting himself. By afternoon, another email arrived from corporate legal counsel confirming the termination. Attached documents outlined ownership changes finalized months earlier. Daniel's signature appeared at the bottom of several pages. He stared at them in disbelief. The signatures were real. He remembered signing but not understanding what. They meant that the realization hit quietly but deeply. Nothing illegal had happened. Everything had been arranged carefully within the rules. Trust had been the only weakness required. Daniel walked into his small kitchen and poured coffee he never drank. His hands moved automatically while his thoughts spun. Anger tried to rise but struggled against disbelief. Betrayal felt too large to accept all at once. Instead, numbness settled in. Later that evening, he received a short message from Victor. At last, this was a difficult decision. I hope you understand someday. No explanation, no apology, just distance. Daniel typed several responses and deleted them all. Words felt useless. What could be said to someone who had already planned his removal long before speaking about it? As night fell, Daniel opened old photo albums stored on a shelf. Company retreats, celebrations, award ceremonies. Victor stood beside him in nearly every picture, smiling like a brother. Employees gathered around them, believing in their partnership. Those images now felt like evidence from another life. He wondered when the change began. Was Victor always planning this? Or had ambition slowly replaced loyalty? The question hurt more than the loss itself. Sleep did not come easily. Daniel lay awake, replaying conversations, searching for moments he missed, subtle hesitations, unexplained decisions, small shifts in tone. Each memory gained new meaning under suspicion. Near midnight, anger finally arrived. Not loud or explosive, but steady and focused. He realized Victor had not simply taken a business. He had rewritten their shared history, presenting Daniel as someone stepping aside willingly. Years of effort reduced to a narrative convenient for one person's success. The thought burned. Daniel stood by the window overlooking the quiet street, watching headlights pass in silence. For the first time, he imagined confronting Victor publicly, exposing everything. He pictured reclaiming dignity through truth, forcing recognition of what had been done. The idea brought a strange sense of energy. Yet beneath the anger lived something else. Grief. He wasn't only mourning a career. He was mourning trust, friendship, and the belief that loyalty protected people from betrayal. Morning arrived again before he realized he had not slept. The world outside continued normally, indifferent to personal disasters. People hurried to work, cafes opened, conversations flowed. Life moved forward whether he was ready or not. Daniel understood then that nothing would return to what it had been. The company was gone. The partnership was over. The person he trusted most had chosen ambition over honesty, and somewhere inside him, a quiet decision formed. Not yet a plan, not yet revenge, but a refusal to disappear. he would understand exactly what happened. He would learn every detail Victor believed, hidden behind legal language and polite statements. Not out of anger alone, but because truth mattered, as he closed his laptop and prepared to face the day. Daniel felt the first clear emotion since. The email arrived, determination that the betrayal had taken his position, his routine, and his certainty. But it had also awakened something he had never needed before, the desire to fight for himself. And though he did not yet know how far that desire would lead him, one thought stayed firmly in his mind as he stepped outside into the morning. Light trust had built his life. Now betrayal would change it forever. Daniel's days no longer followed a schedule, yet his mind never rested. Each morning he woke with the same heavy reminder. The company he built now moved forward without him. At first he tried to distract himself with small routines, cleaning the apartment, walking through familiar streets, answering polite messages from former colleagues who did not know what to say. But silence gave his thoughts too much space. Questions repeated endlessly. Why had Victor done it? When had the friendship turned into strategy? And most of all, why had Daniel not seen it coming? Instead of avoiding the pain, Daniel began studying. He opened old files stored on his computer and reviewed years of emails, contracts, and meeting notes. What once looked ordinary now revealed patterns. Victor had slowly taken control of negotiations, insisting it saved time. Legal documents had grown more complex, signed during busy periods when Daniel trusted summaries instead of details. None of it looked aggressive on its own, but together it formed a careful path leading to one outcome: Daniel's removal. Without conflict, the discovery hurt, yet it also sharpened him. Anger became focus. For the first time in years, Daniel examined every detail without assuming goodwill. He realized betrayal was rarely sudden. It grew quietly while trust stayed blind. One afternoon, a former client named Mrs. Farouk called. Unexpectedly, she had heard rumors and wanted clarification. Daniel hesitated but spoke honestly without blaming anyone. He simply explained he was no longer part of the firm. There was a pause before she said, "We worked with you, Daniel, not just the company. If you start again, call me." The words stayed with him long after the call ended. Perhaps Victor had taken the business structure, but relationships were built on people, not logos. That thought planted a new possibility: rebuilding instead of retreating. Still, revenge lingered in his imagination. Late at night, he pictured exposing Victor's actions publicly. He imagined standing before clients and investors, revealing how trust had been manipulated. The vision gave temporary satisfaction, but afterward he always felt exhausted. Each fantasy tied him closer to the betrayal, as if his future depended entirely on Victor's downfall. Daniel noticed the change in himself. He grew quieter, more guarded. Even simple decisions felt heavy because every choice carried emotional weight. He questioned his own judgment, wondering how someone so careful could have missed obvious signs. Self-doubt became another enemy, whispering that perhaps Victor succeeded because Daniel was too naive. One evening, while organizing storage boxes, Daniel found a notebook from the company's first year. Inside were handwritten plans, rough sketches of ideas they once debated passionately. Many strategies that later defined the firm had come from Daniel's persistence when others doubted him, including Victor. Reading those pages reminded him of something important. He had not been carried by the partnership. He had helped create it. The realization shifted his thinking. Maybe revenge did not require destruction. Maybe success itself could become an answer. Daniel began reaching out quietly to former contacts, not to complain, but to reconnect. Conversations felt natural. People remembered his honesty, his patience, the way he listened before advising. Some shared frustration with the company's new direction under Victor's leadership. Others simply expressed loyalty. Slowly, opportunities appeared, small consulting requests, temporary projects, chances to prove his value again. Each success brought mixed emotions. Pride returned, but anger followed closely behind. Part of him wanted Victor to see it too, regret what he had done. Daniel caught himself checking news about the company, analyzing every public statement Victor made. The obsession worried him. He realized revenge was shaping his motivation more than he wanted to admit. One night, unable to sleep, Daniel walked through the city streets illuminated by soft yellow lights. He stopped outside the old office building. Through the windows, he saw employees working late just as he once had. For a moment, bitterness surged, urging him to act, to reclaim recognition by exposing the truth. But another thought interrupted him. If he destroyed Victor publicly, would it truly heal anything? The lost years would remain lost. Trust would not return. And Daniel himself would become defined by anger rather than growth. He stood there for a long time, wrestling with conflicting desires, justice versus peace, pride versus acceptance. Revenge promised emotional balance, yet it also demanded constant attention, feeding on memory and resentment. Returning home, Daniel made a quiet decision. He would continue building something new, but he would also learn everything he could about how the betrayal happened. Not to attack blindly, but to understand fully. Knowledge would give him control over his own story. Days turned into weeks. His new work expanded gradually. Clients recommended him to others. Confidence returned in small, steady steps. Yet the emotional struggle never fully disappeared. Every achievement reminded him of what had been taken, and every quiet moment reopened the question of whether forgiveness meant weakness. Daniel realized revenge was not a single action, but a choice repeated daily, whether to move forward or remain trapped in the past. Some mornings he felt ready to let go. Other days, anger returned strong enough to reshape his plans. But beneath the conflict, one truth became clear. Victor had changed his life. But only Daniel could decide what that change would mean. And as his new path slowly formed, Daniel understood. He was approaching a moment when he would have to choose not just what to do about Victor, but what kind of man he wanted to become after betrayal. The invitation arrived on a quiet Monday morning, printed on thick white paper that felt heavier than it should. Daniel read it twice before setting it down on his desk. The city's annual business leadership summit had invited him to speak about resilience and rebuilding after professional setbacks. At the bottom of the program schedule was another familiar name, Victor Cole, keynote speaker. For a long moment, Daniel simply stared at the page, feeling old emotions stir again. A year had passed since the betrayal, yet the thought of standing in the same room as Victor made his chest tighten. Fate, it seemed, had arranged a final confrontation. Daniel's new consulting firm had grown steadily, built on trust and patience rather than ambition alone. Clients valued his honesty, and word spread quietly. He worked long hours again, but this time every success belonged fully to him. Still, a part of him carried unfinished business. The summit felt like an opportunity placed directly in his path. A chance to reclaim dignity in front of the same professional world that once believed Victor's version of events. In the days leading up to the conference, Daniel prepared carefully. Alongside his presentation notes sat another folder, one he rarely opened. Inside were documents showing how Victor had maneuvered ownership changes while presenting them as routine updates. Nothing illegal, but deeply misleading. Revealing it publicly would not break laws, yet it would destroy Victor's reputation. Daniel imagined the moment often. Silence filling the room. Shocked faces turning toward Victor. Truth finally visible. Each time he rehearsed the possibility, his emotions shifted between satisfaction and unease. Revenge felt close enough to touch, yet something about it unsettled him. He asked himself whether exposing Victor would bring peace or simply reopen wounds he had worked hard to close. The morning of the summit arrived bright and clear. The conference hall buzzed with conversations, cameras, and polished professionals, greeting one another. Daniel entered calmly, though memories rushed back past events attended with Victor as partners, laughing about future plans. Now they walked separate paths toward the same stage. Victor delivered his keynote first. Daniel watched from backstage. Victor spoke confidently about leadership, adaptability, and making difficult decisions for growth. The audience listened with admiration. Daniel noticed small changes in him, sharper confidence, but also a tiredness behind the smile. For a moment, Daniel wondered if Victor ever thought about the friendship they lost or if success had erased regret. When the applause ended, Daniel felt his decision approaching like an oncoming storm. A coordinator signaled him forward. He walked onto the stage under bright lights, facing hundreds of attentive faces. Somewhere in the crowd sat Victor. Daniel placed his notes on the podium and glanced briefly toward the front row. Their eyes met for the first time in a year. Victor's expression held caution, as if expecting an attack. Daniel's heart pounded. The folder containing the evidence rested inside his briefcase beside the stage. One sentence could change everything. He began speaking. At first his voice felt tight, but soon it steadied. He spoke about loss, not dramatically, but honestly. He described waking up one day and realizing a life chapter had ended without warning. He talked about confusion, anger, and the quiet struggle to rebuild identity after betrayal. The audience listened closely, drawn into the emotion beneath his calm words. Daniel paused halfway through, feeling the weight of choice pressing heavily. This was the moment he had imagined for months. He could reveal names, facts, and details. He could finally balance the scales instead. He continued differently. He spoke about responsibility, how pain can shape people into either victims or learners. He explained that betrayal taught him to read carefully, to trust wisely, and to build relationships based on clarity rather than assumption. Without mentioning Victor, he shared how starting again forced him to rediscover confidence that did not depend on partnership or titles. As he spoke, something unexpected happened inside him. The anger he carried for so long began to loosen. He realized the audience did not need a villain to understand his story. The lesson mattered more than the accusation. Near the end of the speech, Daniel said quietly, "Sometimes the greatest victory is not proving someone else wrong, but proving you can move forward without becoming bitter." The room fell silent before applause slowly grew, filling the hall with warmth rather than shock. When he stepped off the stage, Daniel felt lighter than he had in months. The decision had been made not through impulse, but understanding. Later, Victor approached him near the exit. For a moment, neither spoke. The noise of the conference faded into the background. "I thought you were going to expose me," Victor admitted finally, his voice low. Daniel studied him carefully. He saw confidence mixed with uncertainty, success shadowed by something unresolved. "I considered it," Daniel replied honestly. Victor nodded, almost relieved. "Why didn't you?" Daniel took a slow breath. "Because I realized revenge would keep me connected to the worst moment of my life. I don't want my future built on that." Victor looked down, searching for words that never came. For the first time, Daniel noticed regret in his expression, not dramatic, but real. They parted without argument, without reconciliation, just quiet understanding. Some wounds did not require closure through confrontation. Outside, evening sunlight stretched across the street as Daniel walked toward his car. The city moved normally around him, unaware that a long emotional battle had ended. He expected triumph, but instead felt calm. A steady sense of control over his own story. He understood then that revenge often promises relief, but rarely delivers it. Choosing restraint had not erased the betrayal, yet it freed him from carrying its weight forever. Driving home, Daniel reflected on how easily pain can shape choices. He had stood at the edge of revenge and stepped away, not out of weakness, but strength. The betrayal had changed him, but it had also revealed who he wanted to become, someone defined by growth rather than resentment. And as the sun disappeared behind the buildings, Daniel realized the final truth. Justice is not always found in watching someone fall. Sometimes it is found in realizing you no longer need them to.